They fined me $850 for leaving grocery bags on my own driveway for 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That was the first number that told me this wasn't about trash. It was about control. Welcome to my channel. My name's David Rains. I'm a civil engineer out of Plano, Texas, and I tell real stories about HOA power gone sideways. If you like seeing ordinary people win by knowing the rules better than the bullies, you're in the right place. Subscribe if you want the next fight to find you before it finds you, and tell me, where are you watching from tonight? It started the week after my father's house went into probate. He built that place in 1983, one of the first in the Oakcrest Meadows subdivision when our cul-de-sacs were still gravel. I promised him before he passed that I'd keep the home in the family. The promise stuck in my throat that day like dry cement, because the ink on his death certificate was barely dry when the HOA slipped a notice under my door. Unauthorized exterior storage, grocery bags and perishable goods left visible from public view. $850 due within 15 days, plus $25 per day if unpaid. I called their office. A woman named Karen, the board president, fittingly told me, "Rules are rules, Mr. Rains. You engineers love structure, don't you?" Her voice had the kind of smile you can hear. I kept mine steady and said I'd review the bylaws. She laughed, low and sharp. "You can review all you like, but you'll pay." That night, sitting under the porch light with my father's old ledger open on my knees, I decided to document everything. I bought a lined notebook, labeled each tab: notice, calls, evidence, expenses. Every phone call got a timestamp, every letter a certified receipt. I didn't know yet what game they were playing, but I knew my side would be airtight. The next morning, my neighbor, Sam Owens, a retired firefighter who'd lived there longer than I'd been alive, walked over, coffee thermos in hand. "You got one of their tickets too?" he asked. I nodded. He snorted. "They hit me for a cracked mailbox flag. $300. I fixed it before lunch. Still fined." He showed me his citation. Same signature, same date. We sat on my porch comparing paperwork. A pattern formed before the second cup of coffee was gone. Same handwriting, same timestamps within minutes of each other, as if someone had pre-written the tickets. That told me the violation sweep wasn't reactive. It was a planned revenue day. Sam leaned back and said, "They got new leadership last year, Karen and her crew. All about property values." He used air quotes. "They even started calling the cops when folks argued at meetings." That was my first warning, but I didn't flinch. I had dealt with inspectors and code enforcers my whole career. I understood documentation and procedure. What they didn't understand was that I was already building a case, one line at a time. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Failure to remedy violation. Board to consider legal action. Attached was a color photo of my driveway, zoomed in, with a timestamp that didn't match the day of the alleged offense. The metadata, visible in the printed corner, showed 10/04, while the notice cited 10/06. Rookie mistake. I smiled for the first time in a week. When I called Karen about it, she said, "Oh, the date must have been misprinted." I recorded that call legally. Texas is a one-party consent state, and I was that one party. Knowledge nugget number 1. In one-party consent states, you can record a conversation you're part of without notifying the other party. It's admissible if relevant and authentic. I saved the file with the timestamp and kept quiet. Evidence, not arguments, wins. The next HOA meeting was set for October 18th, 6:00 p.m. I circled it on my calendar the way my father used to circle inspection deadlines. Sam offered to go with me. "You'll need someone who doesn't scare easy," he said. We arrived 5 minutes early, folded the notice, the photo, and my recording log into a binder, and waited. Karen opened the meeting with a practiced smile. "Let's start with item 3, ongoing compliance issues." Her tone changed when she spotted me. "Mr. Rains, you've been quite the topic," I said evenly. "Then let's make sure your minutes reflect accuracy." The boardroom smelled of coffee and toner. Behind Karen sat 2 other members, one scrolling on his phone, another flipping through papers. The fluorescent hum filled the silence as I slid the mismatched photo across the table. "This was taken on the 4th, but your notice claims the 6th. Which date should I consider official?" She blinked once. "The system auto-generates that field. Then your system just committed perjury by timestamp. A chuckle rippled from the back of the room. Sam's dry laugh. Karen's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. "You think you're clever," she said, "but this isn't a courtroom." "Not yet," I replied, "but if you continue falsifying evidence, it will be." A man in a police uniform, off-duty by the badge tilt, stood by the door. A courtesy security presence, apparently. He watched without speaking. I caught his eye briefly. He nodded, subtle acknowledgement that he'd heard everything. When the meeting adjourned, Karen leaned in and whispered, "You want to make this ugly? Fine. You'll regret it." I walked out with Sam into the cold October air. "She doesn't know yet," I said quietly, "but she just started the clock." He frowned. "Clock for what?" "For the moment she realizes she doesn't own the rules she hides behind." Sam and I didn't speak much on that. A drive home, just the hiss of the tires against asphalt and the distant hum of porch lights flicking on across the subdivision. I could feel something in my gut, like the air before a storm. The next day proved it wasn't intuition, it was confirmation. When I pulled out of my driveway at 8:15 a.m., a uniformed officer waved me down. "Mr. Rains?" he asked, reading off a folded report. "We received a call about an alleged trespass." "On my own property?" I asked. He sighed. "Look, I have to check it out. HOA board president says you were interfering with maintenance personnel." There were no maintenance personnel. The only thing in my driveway was a single cardboard box from Home Depot. I told him so. The officer looked past me, noted the box, then jotted something down. "We're done here," he said. "Sorry to waste your time." That's when I realized Karen had called the police. Not once, but twice. Later, the officer told me off the record that there'd been another wellness check request 2 days prior that he'd ignored because the claim was unstable behavior. My name was on a list now. I didn't panic. I filed a records request under the Texas Open Records Act for all dispatch calls linked to my address. If they wanted to weaponize procedure, I'd use it sharper. By that evening, 3 other neighbors texted me about new violation slips. Unapproved mailbox light, improper recycling bin storage, fence color deviation. It was coordinated harassment, and I could almost see Karen's smirk in every bold-faced citation. When Sam came by, he handed me a stack of envelopes. "They're blank," he said. "No explanation, just fines." He shook his head. "They're breaking us down piece by piece." I looked at the envelopes, then at him. Then we stop fighting piece by piece. We fight the structure. He smiled faintly. "You sound like your old man." He was right. My father used to say, "Measure twice, pour once." So I began measuring. Every fine, every timestamp, every mismatch in record keeping. HOA meetings are supposed to follow open meeting requirements under Texas Property Code FAR 209.0051. They hadn't posted notice properly in months. Knowledge nugget number 2. In Texas, an HOA must give at least 72 hours notice for regular meetings and must allow homeowners to speak before the board votes. Any action taken without proper notice is voidable. I printed that statute in 14-point font and pinned it above my desk. Around this time, I posted a subtle community bulletin online. Document everything. Dates, times, photos. Patterns prove intent. Within hours, my inbox filled with quiet replies. Neighbors who'd been fined, insulted, or threatened. A woman named Rosa wrote, "They told me my rose bushes violate sightline aesthetics." She attached a photo, neatly trimmed, nothing wrong. We formed a small coalition, calling ourselves Oak Crest Keepers. Our plan: compile all violations, note inconsistencies, and send them to the County Property Compliance Office. Halfway through compiling, I found something bigger. The HOA's own filings listed their corporation address as Suite 214, Westbrook Plaza. But that suite belonged to an inactive development trust dissolved in 2016. Karen had been using a dead entity to sign notices. That meant every citation since her takeover might be legally void. I didn't tell anyone yet, not even Sam. I needed to confirm the chain of filings, so I visited the county clerk's office, a tan building that smelled like dust and toner. I asked for corporate filings from Oak Crest Meadows Association, Inc. The clerk, a woman with ink-stained fingers, frowned. "You're not the first one asking," she said. "These filings are a mess. The signature on this last amendment, look, doesn't match the notary record." I scanned it. She was right. The signature was more rounded, like someone trying to copy Karen's own name, but failing to mimic the sharp K. I thanked her and paid the $2 copy fee. When I got back home, 2 board members were parked across the street, engine idling. I waved. They didn't. Inside my mailbox was another letter. Cease and desist for harassment of HOA officials. No signature, no date, just bold red font. Sam looked at it and said, "They're trying to make you flinch." I smiled thinly. Let them think I blink slow. By the end of the week, our coalition had gathered 47 separate fines issued within one 10-day period, totaling over $12,000. Same handwriting, same language, no photo evidence for 29 of them. We were sitting in Sam's garage, paper spread across a folding table. He asked, "You think they'll just crumble when you show this?" "No," I said. "People like Karen don't crumble. They bluff until they burn." That's when I decided to go deeper. I started an anonymous LLC, Elm Street Holdings, through a registered agent service. Cost me $139 and took less than 24 hours. The purpose? To quietly purchase the unpaid lien debt from the HOA's servicing bank. Why? Because lien holders don't just collect, they inherit rights. It was my first move toward what I later called reversal number 1. But back then, it was just instinct, like pulling a lever on a machine you designed but haven't tested yet. Before I acted, I needed confirmation the HOA had outstanding notes, so I emailed their treasurer, posing as a potential investor in community improvements, and asked for current balance sheets. 2 days later, an assistant replied with a PDF labeled confidential. It contained what I needed: 3 delinquent lots, totaling $31,200 in lien-backed debt, serviced through First Sun Title Company. I printed it, sealed it, and filed it under Phase 1. Assets. That night, before I turned off the light, I caught myself staring at my father's framed blueprint of the neighborhood. He'd drawn it on vellum, every lot line straight and patient. He'd never have imagined that the people meant to preserve his work would be the ones poisoning it. A small question haunted me as I stood there, hand on the switch. How far should an HOA control your own porch, your own groceries, your own peace? Where's the line, really? Tell me in the comments, because if we don't decide it, they will. The filings came through 3 days later, stamped and official, and with them came confirmation of what I'd suspected. The Oakcrest Meadows HOA had forfeited its good standing certificate as of March 9th, 7 months before Karen's board started issuing fines. That single lapse meant every action they'd taken since could be challenged as ultra-virus, beyond authority. Still, the trick wasn't just to expose them. It was to time it, so their own arrogance hung them. So I played polite. I sent a certified letter addressed to President Oakcrest Meadows Association, requesting clarification of their legal standing. Certified mail costs $4.35. The receipt was worth 1,000 times that later. A week passed. The letter came back unopened, marked, "Return to sender, address unknown." I left it sealed, pinned it to my corkboard, and wrote in red, "Day 0." From there, I started running my clock. 30 days, plenty of time for the lien purchase to mature, and for me to gather every thread. The secret was silence. You can't fight a noise machine with noise. You fight it with paperwork and patience. Sam would drop by evenings with updates from neighbors. "They just cited the Hancocks for improper mulch color," he said one night, shaking his head. "They painted their fence beige, and Karen says it's off-white." "They're provoking," I said. "They want us angrage. If on anger makes you sloppy." He nodded, sipped from his thermos. "You're calm, like a man with a plan." I didn't answer, but he was right. The plan was forming. When I wasn't working, I spent hours at my desk cross-referencing bylaws with state law. Section 209.009 of the Texas Property Code caught my eye. Limitations on foreclosure for fines or attorney's fees. The HOA had been threatening foreclosure on minor fines, something explicitly barred without a majority homeowner vote. Knowledge nugget number 3. In Texas, An HOA cannot foreclose for fines alone without a 67% affirmative vote of homeowners and proper recorded authorization. Attempting it can constitute unlawful coercion. I drafted a memo citing the law, attached 5 anonymized examples of such threats, and quietly sent it to the County Compliance Division. No signatures, no noise, just facts. By mid-November, the retaliation ramped up. Someone keyed my truck in the HOA parking lot. My security camera caught the tail of a silver Lexus pulling out, same plates as Karen's. I filed a report but didn't mention her name. No need to tip cards yet. That same night, a new email arrived. Notice of pending board review, harassment allegations. They accused me of intimidating behavior toward HOA staff. My hands shook with anger when I read it, but the anger cooled fast. The wording matched a template, something copied from a property management software called Covaserve. I knew because I'd used the same system for work once. I logged into a free trial, entered Oakcrest Meadows HOA, and found their publicly exposed backend. Anyone could see their draft templates. There it was. Template 4B, harassment notice. No timestamps, no case numbers, all editable text. They'd fabricated it. That discovery became my fuse. Sam came over again, and I showed him the screen. They're scripting harassment. He exhaled a long whistle. You going to report it? Not yet, I said. First, I buy the ground they're standing on. And I did. On November 21st, Elm Street Holdings finalized the lien assignment from First Sun Title. 3 parcels, totaling $31,200 in secured debt, now legally owed to me. With that purchase, I inherited limited enforcement rights over the HOA's lien collection activities. Reversal number 1, secured. I printed the assignment papers, sealed them in a file, and locked it in my father's old metal box, the one that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and graphite. Visual beat number 1, the clink of the latch closing over those deeds. From that moment on, I was both a homeowner and a lien holder, and the HOA, technically, owed me notice of any policy affecting lien enforcement. They couldn't legally hold a meeting about collections without notifying me. I waited. When December's meeting notice went out, 2 days late, sloppy again, I made copies, annotated the timestamps, and prepared for the public session. Karen's email headline read, Mandatory Compliance Review. Tuesday, December 12th, 6:00 p.m. That would be my stage. The morning of the meeting, I walked my neighborhood slowly, every footstep crunching the winter gravel. Neighbors waved, some whispered good luck. A few porch lights flickered on early, like watchfires before a battle. As I passed Sam's house, he called out, You ready to flip their boardroom upside down? I smiled. No, I said, just ready to turn the lights on. And yet a small fear pulsed underneath, the fear that my father's promise, that the home would always be ours, might still collapse under their smear. The idea of losing it to these petty tyrants made me grind my teeth until I tasted blood. That night, before heading out, I paused by his old blueprint again. I whispered, Tonight's for you, Dad. Then I grabbed the file box, the certified letter, and the binder of violations, and walked toward the meeting hall under the hum of the sodium streetlight. Because if you're going to take on an HOA, you do it where their microphones are hot and their arrogance is loudest. The meeting room was packed tighter than I'd ever seen it, maybe 60 chairs, all filled. Karen stood at the front, yellow blazer crisp, microphone gleaming under the recessed lights. Behind her, the board banner hung slightly crooked, a tiny rebellion from gravity itself. I took the last seat near the aisle, file box at my feet, binder on my lap. Sam sat 2 rows back with his thermos, giving me a quiet nod. The air smelled like burnt coffee and copy paper, and the murmur of neighbors blended into one steady hum until Karen tapped the mic. Good evening, residents, she began, voice syrup-sweet. We'll keep tonight orderly, please. We've had some disruptions lately. Her gaze landed on me like a laser pointer. First item, she said, flipping a page. Outstanding violations and potential foreclosures. That was my cue. I rose slowly, binder in hand. Madam President, as both a homeowner and lien holder, I request recognition before you proceed with any enforcement discussion. Her smile cracked. You're not a lien holder, Mr. Raines. Let's not... I slid a document across the front table, the paper's sound sharp as a blade. Assignment of lien rights, recorded November 21st, instrument number 3175428, filed with Collin County Clerk. Elm Street Holdings, sole beneficiary. The room went still. Karen's eyes darted toward the treasurer, who mouthed, "What is that?" I said quietly, "It means you owe me notice for every collection discussion, which you failed to provide." She stammered, "That can't be." I interrupted, calm but loud enough for the mic to catch. "It can, and it is, and it means every foreclosure vote tonight is void under Section 209.062 of the Texas Property Code." A rustle swept through the crowd. Sam leaned forward, whispering, "Hit them with the statute, Dave." So I did. Knowledge nugget number 4. An HOA cannot conduct business affecting lien rights without proper notice to all lien holders of record. Failure to notify invalidates the action. Karen's jaw flexed. "You think you can hijack this meeting?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm saving it." Behind her, one board member leaned in to whisper something. She waved him off, angry. The off-duty police officer stationed near the exit shifted, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Karen raised her voice. "You're obstructing, Mr. Raines." I reached into my binder, pulled out the certified letter still sealed with the return to sender mark, and held it up for the officer to see. Certified correspondence returned by the HOA's own address. Failure to maintain an official mailing address. Grounds for administrative dissolution. The officer stepped forward slightly. "Ma'am," he said to Karen, "you might want to take a look at that." Her face reddened. "This isn't a court." "No," I said, "but it's a public record." Gasps, murmurs, shifting seats, neighbors leaning closer. The smell of tension filled the air like ozone before lightning. I placed one more document on the table. Notice of lien assignment, notarized, dated, signed, filed with the county. You've been collecting funds on debts you no longer control. For the first time, Karen looked uncertain. Her voice softened, brittle. "Even if what you say were true, that doesn't change the violations, your own included." I stepped closer. "You fined me $850 for grocery bags. Then you fabricated a photo, falsified a timestamp, and filed it under a defunct corporate entity. That's not enforcement. It's fraud." Sam's voice cut through the room. "Show the photo, Dave." I projected it on the community screen, a side-by-side comparison, the alleged violation photo dated 10/04 and the official notice dated 10/06. The mismatch glowed like a neon sign. Karen snapped, "It's a clerical error." I shook my head. "No, it's a pattern. 47 citations, same handwriting, same timestamp gaps. You've been issuing fines through an unregistered HOA and threatening foreclosure with zero authority." Someone in the crowd muttered, "She's been scamming us." Karen pointed at me, voice shaking. "You don't know what you're talking about." I answered, calm and lethal. "Actually, I do, and so will the State Ethics Board when they see your filings." The officer finally spoke again, addressing the crowd. "He's right about the lien law. I just verified the statute on my phone. You might want to adjourn this before you make anything worse." The room erupted in low conversation, some angry, some stunned. Karen's hand trembled as she tapped the mic again. "Meeting adjourned," she barked. But I wasn't finished. "One more thing," I said, my tone soft but cutting through the noise. "As of this moment, any attempt to collect or enforce HOA fines without lawful status will constitute harassment and fraudulent billing. Every homeowner here is a witness." I closed my binder, snapped the latch on the file box, and said to the crowd, "I'll send each of you a copy of tonight's recording and the statutes you need to protect your property." When I turned to leave, Sam caught up beside me. "You just dropped a bomb," he whispered. "Not a bomb," I said. "A mirror." Outside, the air was cold, the kind that carries the smell of pine and asphalt after dark. I looked back once through the glass door. Karen stood there, arguing with the other board members, her posture collapsing inch by inch. Still, I knew this wasn't over. People like her don't quit. They regroup. And they did, fast. Within 48 hours, my phone blew up with anonymous numbers, hang-ups, fake HOA investigation notices. Then came an online smear, anonymous, posts calling me a disgruntled former contractor. They were going to try to ruin me before I ruined them. That's when I decided to go public, not loud, just surgical. I contacted a local journalist, Rachel Blunt from the Plano Ledger, who'd once covered municipal code abuse. I gave her copies of filings, time-stamped violations, and the officer's confirmation from the meeting. She promised to dig. By December 16th, the headline hit online. HOA under fire for alleged falsified fines and illegal foreclosure threats. The view counter ticked upward by the minute. And that was the first domino. So tell me, what's fair punishment for HOA boards that falsify records and harass homeowners? Removal, restitution, or criminal charges? Leave your take below, because the next part of this story will make you rethink what community really means. The morning after that headline broke, the neighborhood was electric. People stopped mid-jog to ask, "Is it true? Can we really challenge every fine?" Emails poured into my inbox, neighbors forwarding old notices, some dating back 4 years. The collective anger had turned into something sharper, curiosity armed with evidence. Karen's counterattack came fast. A thick envelope arrived at my door, stamped, "Immediate action required." Inside were 6 new violation citations, trash can placement, holiday light extension cord, even excessive conversation on front porch after 10 p.m. I counted them out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each carried a $150 fine, 900 total. I laughed once, then started the camera on my phone and filmed myself opening every envelope. "For transparency," I said into the lens, "because sunlight is the best disinfectant." That clip spread through local forums before lunch. Sam texted a link with the caption, "You just went viral." The next week turned into a retaliation montage fit for a courtroom reel. Unmarked cars idled outside my driveway. An inspector showed up twice claiming he'd heard reports of unpermitted plumbing work. My mail was misdelivered 3 days in a row. One night I caught the sound of gravel crunching outside my fence at 1:42 a.m. I stepped out quietly with a flashlight, no one there, just a notice pinned to the gate. "Cease recording board members, potential violation of privacy." I stood there barefoot in the cold grass, papers shaking in my hand, realizing this wasn't just about property values anymore. It was about intimidation, and fear only works if you hide. So the next morning I printed every incident, date, time, photos, license plates when I had them, and filed a harassment complaint with the Plano Police Department. The officer taking the report, Sergeant Morales, glanced over the pages and said, "These people are in over their heads." He added quietly, "Keep your cameras running, you're within your rights." That night I couldn't sleep. My father's old promise kept replaying, keep the house in the family. What if they found a loophole, some technicality to force foreclosure? I imagined the deed slipping out of our name, the porch light going dark. I went downstairs, opened the metal box, and reread the lien assignments. Solid, untouchable. For the first time in weeks, my pulse slowed. I whispered, "You're still safe, Dad." 2 days later, Rachel from the Plano Ledger called. "Your story's about to get louder," she said. "We've confirmed the corporate dissolution. The state just opened an administrative inquiry into Oakcrest Meadows." That was the moment I knew we were winning, but victories like this attract fire before the calm. Karen doubled down, scheduling an emergency homeowner session for January 3rd. The flyer read, "Addressing recent misinformation spread by disgruntled residents." It was bait, and I planned to take it, but on my terms. Sam and I met in his garage to plan. He'd laid out a whiteboard with bullet point and coffee stains. "We'll go in calm," he said. "You speak facts. I'll back you with testimony. Rosa will bring the rosebush photo." I nodded. "And I'll bring leverage." He frowned. "Something new?" I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the HOA's own bank statements, publicly accessible once Rachel's article triggered the inquiry. They showed $18,400 in consulting fees paid to a shell LLC managed by Karen's brother. That was the missing motive: siphoned funds under the cover of enforcement. Sam whistled low. "That's the smoking gun." "Not yet," I said. "It's the match. The smoke comes next." The night before the meeting, I lined up every piece of evidence on my kitchen table. Photos, letters, filings, bank records. It looked less like a collection and more like a battlefield map. Then I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee, staring at the flicker of holiday lights still hanging crooked along the eaves. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine life after this. Barbecues without fear of citations, kids riding bikes without safety committee warnings. But before peace, the fire. When I walked into the HOA hall on January 3rd, Karen was already at the podium, voice sharp and loud. "These baseless accusations have tarnished our community's image," she declared. "We will not be intimidated by false narratives." I waited until she paused for breath. Then I stood holding the folder. "Then let's clear the record publicly." She tried to cut me off. "You are not recognized." But a voice from the back interrupted her. Sergeant Morales had shown up in uniform, arms crossed. "He's recognized tonight. I'm here under county inquiry notice." That froze the room. Cameras clicked, phones lifted. Karen faltered, papers trembling. I said quietly but firmly, "You've been paying your brother's company from HOA funds. You filed liens through a dissolved corporation. You falsified evidence to fine residents. And you called the police on me for unloading groceries." A collective gasp rippled through the hall. Karen's lips part, then closed. "You can't prove." I handed Morales the folder. "Every transfer, every check stub, signed by you." He flipped a few pages, nodded once, and spoke into his radio. "County investigator, you're going to want to get down here." The crowd erupted. Neighbors who'd been silent for months stood shouting questions, demanding refunds. Sam's voice rose above them all. "We deserve a vote." For a moment, it was chaos, a decade of suppressed frustration finally spilling out. And in that noise, I caught Karen's eye. For the first time, she looked small. Outside, as officers began escorting her to a private room for questioning, I exhaled so hard it felt like years leaving my lungs. Sam clapped my shoulder. "You did it," he said. "Not yet," I answered. "Now we rebuild." "Tell me, should HOAs be allowed to handle their own investigations, or should neutral inspectors like Morales oversee them all? Drop your answer below, or at least like the video so more homeowners learn what fairness looks like. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within 48 hours, county auditors had sealed the HOA's bank accounts pending review. Word spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. Residents checking mailboxes, whispering over fences, forwarding the ledger link to friends 2 streets over. Karen had gone quiet. Her yellow blazer no longer appeared at meetings. Instead, an acting president, a nervous man named Phil, sent out a statement of continuity, assuring residents that routine functions would resume. But we all knew the heart had been cut out of their machine. Still, I wasn't done. The inquiry would expose misuse of funds, yes, but I wanted something bigger, something that would keep future boards from ever doing this again. That's when the idea hit me. Leverage the lien rights one more time, not to collect, but to control the narrative. I filed a public notice with the county, formally offering to assign the HOA's lien portfolio back to the community trust, on one condition, that Oakcrest Meadows adopt a transparency charter with 3 binding reforms: term limits for board members, mandatory public financial disclosure, and open voting by homeowners. It was my second reversal, brewing quietly. But before I could push it through, the retaliation tried to rise from the ashes one last time. Someone spray-painted "traitor" on my fence in red block letters. Another night, eggs splattered across my garage door. I cleaned in silence, Sam helping beside me. "They're desperate," he said, "cornered animals." I nodded. And desperate people make mistakes. The next morning, a plain white envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a typed letter. "Withdraw your lien or face defamation suits." Signed, Oakcrest Legal Counsel. The signature was printed, not penned. I checked the footer, no bar number, no letterhead. A bluff. I smiled, scanned it, and forwarded it directly to Morales. By then, Rachel's follow-up story had gone national. When homeowners fight back, the Texas engineer who beat his HOA with its own rules. Views climbed into the hundreds of thousands. I woke up to emails from strangers thanking me for standing up, sharing their own stories of petty fines and harassment. That was the moment the fear shifted. It wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. Sam stopped by one afternoon holding a stack of letters. "Look," he said, Petition signatures. 92 households want to dissolve the old board and call a special election. I took the list and felt something click into place. Let's make it official. We drafted a notice citing Section 209, E057, homeowners' right to demand a special meeting with at least 10% signatures. We had triple that. Phil tried to stonewall, claiming procedural backlog. So we mailed a certified demand to the HOA's registered agent, same as before, time-stamped, receipt in hand. When the day came, January 24th, the recreation hall filled again, standing room only. Reporters lined the walls. The county inspector sat near the front, clipboard ready. Karen appeared halfway through, escorted by a lawyer whose tie didn't match his suit. Her face was pale, eyes sunken from weeks of fallout. I didn't gloat. I just opened my file box one last time. Before we vote, I said, I'd like to introduce a document, the proposed Oakcrest Charter of Accountability. The lawyer raised a hand. My client objects. The inspector cut him off. He's within his rights to present it. Proceed. I laid out the reforms in plain English. 1. No board member serves more than 2 consecutive terms. 2. All financials published quarterly online. 3. Open vote verification using third-party oversight. Then I paused. Let the silence breathe. I'll relinquish my lien rights and withdraw the debt claims if this charter passes by majority vote tonight. Gasps, murmurs, nods. Karen looked around, realizing she was outnumbered. The inspector asked, Is this offer in writing? I handed him the single-page statement, notarized and dated. Signed under Elm Street Holdings, the leverage ends when reform begins. He reviewed it, nodded, then addressed the room. Ladies and gentlemen, this proposal meets all statutory requirements for voluntary community governance reform. You may vote. Hands went up, row after row, unanimous except for Karen and her lawyer. It passed. That was reversal number 2, trading leverage for structural change. When the crowd erupted into applause, I just stood still, letting the sound wash over me. For months I'd fought with law books and sleepless nights. Now it was over. Outside, under the yellow glow of the parking lot lamps, Karen approached me quietly. You destroyed my reputation, she said. No, I replied. You did that the day you called the cops on a man unloading groceries. Her jaw tightened, but there was nothing left to say. She turned away, the click of her heels fading into the cool air. Sam came up beside me, grinning. You could have gone for blood, he said. Instead, you went for backbone. I smiled. Backbone lasts longer. We stood there a moment, the winter breeze tugging at the edges of the new charter papers in my hand. So what would you have done? Bought the liens like I did, or taken them straight to court? Tell me your approach in the comments. I'm curious how you'd handle power that hides behind fine print. The new board's first order of business was accountability. 2 weeks after the vote, Oakcrest Meadows released its first ever public ledger. Every expense, every invoice, down to the last cent of fertilizer. Seeing those numbers in black and white felt like breathing fresh air after years of mold. Karen's resignation letter hit the record the same morning. Effective immediately, it read. No apology, just that. Her brother's LLC was already under investigation for fraudulent contracting. The sheriff's office issued a press release confirming potential charges for misuse of community funds and false reports to law enforcement. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because the real test wasn't punishment. It was what came next. I met with Phil and the interim treasurer in the HOA office, a space that finally smelled more like coffee than fear. We'll need to rebuild trust, Phil said, his voice steady but tired. People are angry, but they still want their lawns mowed and lights fixed. I nodded. Start small. Publish every work order online. Let neighbors see where every dollar goes. He wrote it down, then hesitated. And you? What now? I smiled faintly. Now I step back. This isn't about me owning the win. It's about no one ever having to fight the same battle again. That afternoon I returned home and sat on my porch, the same place this all began with that ridiculous $850 grocery fine. The mailbox was empty for once. No threats, no tickets, just quiet. Sam walked over carrying 2 beers. To survival, he said, clinking bottles. To reform, I replied. He took a sip, squinting toward the street. You think people will remember why this mattered? They'll remember when the next board tries something stupid and can't get away with it. He laughed, that wheezy firefighter chuckle that always cracked the tension. You're an optimist now. Practical optimist, I said. The best kind. By mid-February, the reforms were in motion. New elections scheduled, transparency site live, audit committee formed. Rachel's third article, titled Reform from Within, detailed the turnaround and even quoted Sam. We stopped being afraid of letters in our mailboxes. The HOA's insurer issued a bulletin of its own. Premium adjustments contingent on verified compliance reforms. Money was forcing ethics for once. Then came the county's final report. 247 violations issued unlawfully, 91 refunded in full, 3 board members under formal censure, and 1 referral to the district attorney. Karen's name was on that line. Probation likely, restitution certain. It was justice by the book, nothing cinematic, just correct, and that's what I'd wanted all along. The night the report became public, I walked the neighborhood one last time before the community's first open voting session. Porch lights flickered like small promises. Kids rode scooters under watchful parents, unbothered by patrol trucks or citations. The air smelled faintly of wet cedar and something lighter, relief. When I reached the park, I stopped at the notice board where the original grocery fine had once hung. In its place now, community meeting. Tonight, charter celebration. I traced the thumbtack hole where my name used to be printed in bold, fined for public clutter. That's when the emotion hit. Sudden, clean. My father would have smiled at that board. He'd always believed that blueprints were promises, not just plans. At the meeting, the crowd filled the hall again, but this time there was laughter instead of shouting. Kids ran between folding chairs while adults voted on new landscaping proposals. Transparency in action. When it came time for comments, Phil gestured toward me. You've earned the mic, Dave. I shook my head. Not tonight. The story's already written where it counts. He grinned. At least stay for the vote. I did. Hands rose around me. Neighbors I barely knew, now united not by fear but by process. And for the first time since my father's death, the promise I'd made him felt fulfilled. Outside, as the meeting ended, Sam clapped me on the shoulder. So, what's next, Mr. Engineer? I smiled, glancing at the quiet rows of homes under the streetlights. Next, maybe tell another story. There's always another HOA somewhere thinking they're untouchable. He grinned. You'll be their nightmare. Or their education, I said. So let me ask you, should every HOA in America be required to post their financials online quarterly, or is that too much transparency? Comment your take below, because the more voices we have, the fewer shadows they can hide in. The next morning, the sun hit the cul-de-sac just right. Long shadows over fresh pavement, the sound of sprinklers hissing like applause. For the first time in a year, I didn't wake up bracing for a notice on my door. The fight had ended, but what it built mattered more than what it burned down. Within a week, the Oakcrest Charter of Accountability went live. Every homeowner received a login for the new transparency portal, budgets, contractor bids, and meeting minutes posted in real time. The dashboard even displayed the HOA's own compliance countdown timer, each reform milestone checked off like a heartbeat. Then came the message that sealed everything, a short email from Sergeant Morales. Administrative closure achieved. All claims resolved. Board turnover complete. Good work, Mr. Raines. No ceremony, no spotlight. Just a clean line at the bottom of a very long ledger. I stood on my porch that evening watching neighbors set out folding chairs for what they called the first real community potluck. Kids chalked the sidewalk with pastel suns. Rosa brought roses for everyone. Symbolic, she said, because they tried to ban them. Even Phil laughed when someone taped a mock citation to the dessert table reading, Unauthorized Joy, $0 fine. Visual beat number 3, that fake citation fluttering in the breeze, the word void stamped diagonally across it. Rachel arrived with her camera crew to film the follow-up segment. She asked what I'd learned through it all. I told her that governance isn't the enemy. Silence is. The moment people stop reading their own covenants, they invite tyranny through the front gate. She nodded, eyes glinting under the porch light. That's a headline already. After the crew left, Sam poured 2 coffees into travel mugs and joined me at the curb. "Hard to believe a grocery bag started this war," he said. "Sometimes it's the smallest violation that reveals the biggest rot," I replied. We sat there for a while, listening to the buzz of conversation drifting down the street. The night air smelled of cedar smoke and caramel from someone's brownies. He asked quietly, "You ever think you went too far?" I thought about it. "Maybe," I said, "but if I had, then they'd still be calling cops on people for living their lives." He grinned. "Fair point." I leaned back, watching the porch lights shimmer across car hoods like low constellations. "Funny thing," I said. "After all the law books, liens, and letters, what fixed this place wasn't punishment. It was participation." He raised his mug. "To participation. To community," I answered, clinking mine against his. Later that week, I got one last certified letter, this time from the state ombud's office, confirming adoption of the new charter and listing Oakcrest Meadows as a model pilot community for HOA transparency initiatives. That phrase, model community, felt surreal. The same place once weaponized by a petty board was now an example for others. The ledger ran one final blurb. Following a year-long investigation, Oakcrest Meadows residents passed the state's first voluntary HOA reform charter. Former board president pleads no contest to falsification charges. Insurance carriers revise oversight policies statewide. I pinned that clipping to my father's old blueprint, right above the lot marked, "Reigns, full circle." And here's the truth I keep for anyone still fighting their own version of this story. The law only matters if you learn to speak it out loud. Write down every date, keep every receipt, and never let intimidation make you smaller than your own property line. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend who's still dealing with an unfair HOA. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. As responsible citizens, share this so others learn that rules aren't weapons, they're tools. That's on us. Because communities don't heal by accident. They heal when people refuse to be quiet. So when someone tells you, "It's just the HOA, you can't win," remember this story. You can win, lawfully, calmly, and completely. And as for me, well, there's a subdivision 2 towns over that just sent out a $500 noise ordinance fine for kids' basketball hoops. I think it's time for another visit.